As everyone knows, Australia's been facing catastrophic fire conditions this season. Employed and volunteer firefighters have been working for months. They've been desperately trying to save properties and lives.
It's prompted many to question whether we can be doing more as a nation to prepare ourselves for the dangerous conditions Australia is continuing to face. Jon Dee is the Managing Director of DoSomething Foundation, and he joins us now. Jon, thanks for coming in this morning.
Good morning.
Your place is actually in Katoomba in the Blue Mountains, which has been really impacted by the fires. How's it going at the moment?
Well, the volunteer firefighters have been doing an amazing job with the backburn. We had a backburn just over 1 kilometre from our house, and that's protecting us from that Gospers Mountain fire, that huge mega fire that's over 400,000 hectares in size, and that was heading straight for us. That was only 4 kilometres away from our house. So that backburn that they've been doing, they've done it incredibly well.
Before we get to specifics about what you think we could be doing, I just want you to put in context this whole conversation for us, because rather than being a piecemeal selection of specific policy proposals, what you're really encouraging is a total rethink about how we approach bushfires.
Absolutely. If you think about it, we've lost so far, we're told, 5 million hectares have been burned. We've lost over 1,000 homes. Now, if a foreign country had done that to us, we'd declare war on them. And so what I'd like to propose is that we actually need to go on a war footing against bushfires and against climate change. We've got an amazing military, very well trained, very well resourced. At what point do we start getting army fire engines? At what point do we get soldiers picking up hoses? Similar to what's happened in the UK. When there's been national crises in the UK before, they've brought out army fire engines, army soldiers to help fight fires. And I think at some point we need to provide backup to these volunteer firefighters, because they really are stretched beyond belief.
Because at the moment the Army is not necessarily equipped or trained to deal with these fires. They have been sent in somewhat. So the government announced this week that specialist defence personnel will be sent to advise at incident control centres around the state. What do you make of them playing that role?
Well, the Army's doing a great job providing catering, logistics, transportation. They're doing a lot of work that they haven't really been given credit for, and so big thanks to them from people in the Blue Mountains. But at the same time, if you look at how we nearly got overrun in Blackheath and in Lithgow with those fires, I think Australians saw that these fires are something altogether different to what we've seen before. They're incredibly ferocious. The people on the ground that I've spoken to, the volunteer firefighters, have said this is like nothing they've seen before. And so I think we need to get more resources there. So, in terms of, can we get the Army to have fire engines? I mean, they already have trained firefighters in the Army, and they're very good at what they do. So why can't we involve them in the current bushfires? And if you think about the aerial firefighting, a lot of the former fire chiefs are now saying to us, we need to roll out far bigger firefighting capabilities from the air. And yet, when you look at it in detail, I found just by speaking to the US Forest Service that they have 8 firefighting planes that are designed to be available within 24 hours, and they confirmed to me in writing this morning that the Australian government hasn't even asked them if we can borrow those 8 firefighting planes. When you look at how short we are on big firefighting capability from the air, why hasn't the Australian government asked for that? That's really basic stuff.
Indeed, in the United States, I believe they've been retooling some of their planes for their own purposes because of their terrible wildfires over the past couple of years as well, and they've been transitioning some of that material from being in the forestry department, for example, to being equipped for firefighting capabilities. Don't we have the resources to do that here, even without asking for foreign help?
Well, this is what doesn't make sense. We've got these, in the Blue Mountains, of all places, at Richmond Royal Australian Air Force Base, we've got 12 C-130 Hercules cargo transport planes. Now, if you have a mobile airborne firefighting system, what the industry calls MAFs, they're from America. That's what the American government uses in those 8 reserve planes that they have. It only costs $4 to $6 million each to get those and put them into our Hercules planes at Richmond. So for the next firefighting season, that seems to be an incredibly cheap way of turning the existing Hercules into a firefighting craft. It only takes 1 hour to load these up onto the back of a Hercules jet and have them out there dropping 11,000 litres of water. But as I said, there are 8 planes currently sitting in America, and the Forest Service confirmed they're not fighting wildfires at the moment, and they are 8 planes. The Australian government could pick up the phone today, and within 24 to 48 hours, we could have those 8 planes over here in Australia.
There have also been discussions about how we resource and support firefighters. So at the moment, we've had volunteer firefighters fighting these fires for months on end. Some of them are going into debt, and there's been discussion or calls for professionalising the firefighters. Is that something that would boost their capacity and, I guess, equip them to continue?
I think there's 2 issues there. Firstly, we are putting volunteer firefighters into harm's way, and they're volunteering to do that, but we're not giving them adequate resources. So at the moment on Facebook in the Blue Mountains, people are crowdfunding to give proper ventilation masks to deal with the effects of smoke, because the existing masks they've got simply aren't good enough. And then if you look at it with firefighters who have been volunteering now for weeks at a time, if you're self-employed or have a small business, that's just not, that's not sustainable. So if you look at the Defence Reserve, they have firefighters and they're paid $178 a day. So if we can do that with Defence Reservists, maybe after a couple of weeks of volunteering, do we have some kind of payment kicking in for situations like we're seeing?
And the government has also announced it'll grant Commonwealth Public Service workers at least 4 weeks paid leave to get more boots on the ground as well.
Well, my understanding is that already existed, and there's been far too many announcements re-announced, like the $11 million additional funding. That had already been announced a year ago. And I think we're seeing from the politicians too much talk, and what we're not seeing on the ground is enough action to support the volunteer fire service in a way that actually gets better results on the ground. We should not forget we've had over 5 million hectares burnt, we've lost 1,000 homes. It's time to deal with this in a different way, and I think one of the basic things we need to look at is getting those 8 planes from America and get them fighting fires here.
You mentioned climate change earlier. Obviously, as the climate becomes more chaotic, extreme weather events become more frequent, more unpredictable, more haphazard, more intense. In the absence of any change on climate policy, is there a way that we could? I mean, what would you do if you were emperor of the world, I suppose, in order to convene a strategic?
It's a dangerous thought.
Yeah, I'm not saying I want this to happen. I'm just saying, if you were, John, to convene a response so that next time this does happen, we're not scrambling.
I think we just need to look at what is best practice in other countries around the world. Look, as I said, with Britain, they have brought out the army fire engines and army and soldiers to fight fires. Maybe that's something we could look to copy here. I think we just need to look at what have other countries done that is best practice. Let's look to implement that here.
Jon Dee, thanks so much for coming in this morning.
Thanks, John.